Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching, and welcome back to another episode of Crossing Darkness. This is Season 2, Episode 2. I'm your host, Joshua Golden, otherwise known as Frozen Fallout. My co-host with me today is Motorori, otherwise known as Mike.
Hi, everybody.
This episode, we will continue a remake of the Madison Under Siege setting that we're rebuilding at this time. To start off, we'll go over some of the different games that we will be using in our setting, as we use 4 different primary games, and what each one looks like at its base. So what we've kind of constructed with them, and what the game is, the base concept of the game at least. And in the future episodes, we're going to be creating some and revising some more in-depth aspects of the setting, such as like characters and important locations, stuff like that. And at the end of each one of our episodes, we're going to have like a little lore section. So I'm going to start you off here with a Vampire the Masquerade is one of our main settings that we have for Madison Under Siege. So Vampire the Masquerade is one of the more popular settings for sure in the World of Darkness. It's one of their mainline games. Primarily has to do with, of course, vampires. They call themselves Kindred, actually, in the game. Vampire is kind of like a curse word kind of thing. Overall, there's like 13 different clans that exist in the game, but there's primarily just like 7 of them that you would really play in the Camarilla. And then there's the Sabbat, and then there's the Independents. I'm not going to get into everything in this podcast about Vampire the Masquerade, but what I will say is that the main concept of the Vampire the Masquerade is that after the Dark Ages, the vampires kind of went into a masquerade mode and stopped being open about there being supernatural creatures going on. And there's a bunch of other things that happen in the World of Darkness to also influence that. But one of the main ones, of course, for the vampires is the Inquisition and the Burning Times and stuff like that. So after that, there was a formation of what was called the Camarilla, which is 7 of the 13 clans of vampires kind of got together and said, hey, let's create this thing called the Masquerade, and we're going to go into the shadows and control the world and feed off of humanity from the shadows. And then you play as one of these 7 clans in modern day setting. So a lot of settings are in like the 90s to the year 2020, or beyond, if you really wanted to. But the primary setting for it is the 90s and the early 2000s. And overall, it's like a smaller 4-person tabletop D10 system. We're not going to really get into the whole system and everything about it, but I do have to say, I just want to say one thing about the D10 system. It is really simple, and I really like playing in the D10 system for the fact that like we've been running like a lot of games recently over Twitch and over just Discord in general, and with the World of Darkness comparatively to my other games like Pathfinder and Starfinder is what we're playing right now, right?
Starfinder is what we're currently playing.
Right. So basically, there's a lot more digging into the rules with those games. With the World of Darkness games that we're running, I basically haven't even touched a rule book, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So in any case, some of the main aspects of the World of Darkness D10 system is that it's extremely simple. You only need D10s, and you have, on a scale of 1 to 10 usually, on how many dice that you're going to roll, and the difficulty is generally around 6. In any case, though, it's a really simple system. The setting is really simple because it's our world. We use Madison as our setting. And then to kind of go into what we kind of did in Madison Under Siege, um, we have like a little document that kind of gives us like a little bit of information as to what, and we gave out to a lot of players. I'm not going to go through it all, um, but we kind of started off the concept that the first real appearance of vampires started in like the 1860s to the 1920s. Um, and basically it was a Tremere that arrived, a Gangrel that arrived. There was a Bali that we had in the original arrival crew of vampires. But basically they all kind of arrived in this area and started working not long after the like rise of the city of Madison. And then so that was like, anarchy times, there was no Camarilla or anything over here. And in general we made it so like through the 1930s to the 1980s, late 1980s, that the city became officially an anarch city. And there was a prince, so it was a Camarilla city for a while, and then it switched over to being an anarch city during between the 1930s and the 1990s, and then became like this big haven of anarchists, basically. We have like we have makings of a lot of the different population breakdowns here. Let's see. So, I mean, overall, we have way too many vampires, and that's something that we might revise on our second wave here. Is that our first wave we had, I don't know, like basically 100 like 60 vampires in Madison. We need to tone that down to probably around 30 or something like that. In a real city of this size, you can kind of double the size for being the World of Darkness. Population is like out of control in the World of Darkness comparatively, and just cities are just more jam-packed. So you can probably do maybe 5-10 vampires, comfortably, and anything above that you're gonna have weird reasons why that needs to be. And we do have a lot of weird reasons, but I don't know if we're at a size where we can support. We did have even weirder reasons why we could support that high of a population count, but we might be taking that out.
We can get into that when we talk about the Gahara Pact.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up one of the original rules that was in one of the original vampire books was the general rule for how many vampires can be in a city, and it's one, I think, per 100,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you basically double the population of every city because it's the World of Darkness.
Right.
So by that rule, I think we would have 2. But every single book that Vampire
by
ever
that
published
we would have 4.
That rule. Yeah.
And that's a rule that's like if this was the very perfect city that was run by the best, prince who is keeping the population at what would be a masquerade non-breaking level, you would do 1 per every 100,000. But I think there is something like documented somewhere in one of the books, like 200 vampires plus in New York City.
Yeah, they never followed that rule in any of the books, so we didn't either.
Yeah, but there is
like
a certain.
Said, we had other reasons for more vampires to be able to exist here.
Right, supply of blood that allowed for people to actually. We had like a True Blood kind of thing going on. But in any case, so that's kind of the generalized aspect of what the World of Darkness is for Vampire the Masquerade in Madison Under Siege, and then we're going to be taking a lot of that and just remaking it. We're going to go more in depth into each one of these characters, who they are, what they were before, and probably what we're going to be making them into, or just at the very least what we're turning them into now. So at this point, I'm gonna hand it on over to Motorori here. He's gonna go over Werewolf, which was one of his major projects.
Okay, yeah. So when we started this project, I was in charge of the werewolves, and so like you did, I'll go over their werewolf in general. So a lot like werewolves in regular mythology, except for, let's see, where do I start? You're still a werewolf. You can turn into a wolf. You can turn into a big ass werewolf, which in the game is called Krynos form. You are born a werewolf. You do not get bitten. Although one of my players at Gen Con first year made a werewolf like that, and I allowed it, which is okay. It's set up as a tribal system. I actually cannot remember how many tribes there are. Is it 13? It's probably not that many.
I think it's 12.
The White Howlers were the 13th tribe. But anyway, so you play in one of the tribes. They're generally regionally based. The ones that are in North America, the main one in this area would have been Wendigo. There used to be the Croatan, which was in the kind of United States area, but there's a lot of lore about why they're not around anymore. Anyway, so you grow up in werewolf society, and you go through your first change. You join a pack. You do werewolf stuff, which is mostly fighting, and going into the spirit world. That's a huge part of werewolf lore. You're the bridge between the physical world and the Umbra, which is the spirit world. You get gifts from spirits, and then you rank up in werewolf society, and you fight for Gaia, the spirit mother of Earth, because she is dying because there's vampires and mages, evil people doing really evil stuff. So that's what most werewolf games revolve around. In Madison, they're pretty powerful here, and we'll go over that when we get to the Gahara Pact stuff. They have a few locations that are strongholds of power, and they exist to a very large degree in the area. I think, how many did I make? I made at least 10 werewolf characters. There's so many.
Well, there was one. Pretty sure there was one for each tribe.
There was one for each tribe.
At least.
And then I wrote up okay, so the corrupted werewolves are called Black Spiral Dancers. That's who my main villain was in the beginning. And I honestly can't remember his name.
Oh, what was it?
Like 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, that was in our prelude to Gen Con.
One of the bad guys I named Roidquake.
Roidquake, I remember that guy.
He, I think he died at the end of Gen Con year 1. Or at least was destroyed. Yeah, there's a guy that's above him in that evil organization, but he hasn't even been revealed in the story, so because we never got to him. So I'll just leave that there. Do you have any questions about werewolf in Madison Under Siege? Because I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff.
No, I think that's a good general overview. So the next thing that we're going to go into is Mage. And so Mage the Ascension is a one of the more difficult games for people to kind of get into because it doesn't have a very well structured concept on its very well structured set for its rules regarding and it's gotten a lot better. It's magic powers basically, but it's very lucid with loose with its and lucid with its stuff that it's doing with its powers. But the general concept of Mage the Ascension is that reality can be bent to a person's will, and that reality is sort of made up of truth and consensus. And what consensus is and what truth is gets really muddled and is really something that is debated upon, with all players and all inside of the game and outside of the game, and it's the big aspect of what is reality, what is truth in reality, what is really the fuck going on here. Is this just a game that we're playing, that's a tabletop game that humans are controlling us? Like, there could be somebody in the world of darkness who believes this because of Mage the Ascension, and be able to do crazy ass shit with the belief that there's a GM and a player base that's behind it doing stuff. And if it believes that strongly enough and has found enough hidden truth inside of the workings of how reality actually works, it can enact that will upon reality. And the further you go from reality, the more crazy you go, the more you can become marauders, or the more corrupt you go, you can become Nefandi. But there's traditionally two types of main types of mages, and that's the tradition mages, which kind of comprise your more traditional aspect of what you would consider a mage. Your Hermetic Order, which is going to be, very much your mages from Dungeons and Dragons. They read books, they have formulas, they have their own science behind how they do what they do. And as much as a player can kind of play whatever the hell they want and have any kind of belief structure that they want, once you start honing down who you are and how you do things, you're not just able to just be like, I can just do whatever the hell I want. You have a belief structure. So these Hermetic mages believe that they have to find tomes, and they have to do research, and they actually need to do stuff in order to learn about how to do their things. But they're also able to do spontaneous magic as well. Spontaneous magic is not something that's as easy for them to do, but it's definitely doable. And you don't need to have tools or books or anything in order to do any of this stuff. That's all just focuses for how you're doing magic. There's other ones like the Verbena who use blood and are your Wiccan or pagan magic. You have your more drug-oriented Cult of Ecstasy group, and then your virtual adepts who are into cyberspace and stuff like that. But in any case, so there's a bunch of these different kind of groups inside of the tradition mages that kind of make up what is traditional magic. There's a few that are a little bit weird, which is like the Sons of Ether specifically, and the virtual adepts, because they're like weird science. Ones are like super hackers, and the others are like crazy inventa, weird stuff type kind of group. And then there's the technocracy, which is the ones that are kind of winning the war. They're kind of ruling the whole world. They're the big bad guys in the framework of the game. Although you can frame them as being the good guys, and as more books came out, they became more of a group that can actually be seen as a friendly group. Which is what we're kind of doing in our game of Mage Technogate on Mondays. So we're doing, there's a whole aspect to the technocracy, but the basis of them is that they believe in the power of science. They don't believe that they are bending reality. They don't believe that they are doing anything other than finding the truth of reality and seeing reality properly, and then kicking out anything from this world that doesn't belong to this reality. That there's a bunch of other realities out there. There's an Umbra and all these other things, but what humanity needs to be worried about is true reality, and they need to protect humanity from the rest of these reality deviants, basically. Mages comprise of reality deviants because they choose to enact their belief on the world and transmute it and change reality instead of obeying the laws of reality. And they don't see themselves as changing reality or transmuting it or doing anything, even with their most vulgar of magic. They always have to have a foci. They always have to have some kind of technological means to the way that they're accomplishing what they're doing. But in any case, they see themselves as the good guys and the protectors of reality. The traditions see themselves as the people that are trying to bring wonder to the world, and are trying to bring back this, trying to bring humanity away from being controlled by this crazy organism, actually, or entity called control that actually is part of the technocracy, is the hierarchy of it all. And they're trying to fight, there's this huge reality war going on. Is humanity supposed to go down the path of technology or not? But anyways.
What is the presence of mages in Madison in our setting?
So in our setting, we have the tradition mages are the ones that run primarily the most of the stuff in Madison. The technocracy in Madison is a small little group that hangs out underneath the airport and has made like a truce basically with the tradition mages. And the tradition mages have one of every single one of the seats. There's 9 different tradition groups, and we'll go into those later. But they have one seat for all of them. It's considered a major, an important node inside of our history of mage, basically, that this is not considered like a super node or anything by the outside world, as that's kind of hidden. But like it is a major node and a major import, and reality in Madison is a little bit more customized. It's a little bit more loose. There's not as much vulgar magic that can be done here, just because we go with the Mage 20th anniversary, which kind of talks about bubble realities, where in different areas of the world, depending on what the locals believe, highly influence how reality can be shaped, basically. And so
the mages of Madison have a city that they live in that's like in the Umbra, right?
Oh yeah,
the Shard Realm.
There's the Horizon Realm. So yeah, the mages, there's the Umbra, which is basically the spirit realm or whatever, and other dimensions and realities, and then there's an area called the Horizon Realm, which is at like the edge of it. And there's a big war that's happening on this like other plane of existence, and a lot of different mage groups have what they call Horizon Realms that exist inside of this Horizon Realm. So they kind of have, I mean, from a certain point of view, you kind of see it as like a big giant floating island above Madison. And it's not as big as Madison, but it's about the size of the isthmus, basically, give or take.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the mages live, but also a lot of humans live there, non-enlightened people.
Right, non-enlightened, just, they abide by different rules. They can do magic, on the most basics of sense. Hedge magery is what they call it. There's all different types of, mystical creatures and other things there. There's settlements, and there's like a big giant mountain in the center with lightning, and it's a crazy. We'll bring up pictures someday to show off some of that stuff.
We'll have to do some deep dives on those. Do you have anything else about the mages?
No, I think that's a good little brief overview of mage in Madison.
All right, so I'm going to talk about Hunter, which, if you were going to choose 4, it's definitely vampires, werewolves, mages were the big 3, and because of what we wanted to do, we needed a 4th, and we chose Hunter, and it was kind of the 4th biggest one, although Wraith, I think you'd probably make an argument for. But anyway, so Hunter is the mythos that they added in, I believe, the late 90s to the World of Darkness, where essentially, in a time of crisis, a normal human is imbued with supernatural powers specifically to fight supernaturals, werewolves, vampires, in some cases mages. Most of what they fight is the horror stuff. The game was set up to be a game of personal horror. You are a mortal who has seen through the veil. You have been given power to fight these things, and the theme of the game is you are descending into madness as you gain more power, and it's basically which is going to kill you first, your insanity or the things that you are compelled to fight. That's not the direction that we took. So it was our good friend Brian that originally wrote the Mythos for Hunters in Madison, and he put them into an academy that was modeled off of Professor X's School for Gifted Youngsters. When I took over Hunter in the second year, I kind of revised that, and I basically said, no, it's so much bigger than that. So back in the late 70s, early 90s, this guy comes back from Vietnam having been imbued as a hunter, despite the fact that hunters weren't technically around at that point in the mythos, or in the World of Darkness. We've kind of pushed it back a little bit. He comes back and he starts hunting supernaturals. And then at some point, he kills a vampire in its lair and finds piles of money. And so he says, I think this might be a good way to do things. Find supernaturals, mostly vampires, who have piles of money sitting around. So he goes back to Madison, where he's originally from, and he starts a little company called Edge Systems. And it's all about data mining and data security. And so he says to different companies, I will hold on to your files, and I will guarantee that they will be safe. Not telling those people, those banks and financial institutions and law firms, that he is taking their information and figuring out through data mining where supernaturals are. And then he figures out whether or not it's profitable to kill them. It goes pretty slowly until the year, is it 2000 when the Avatar storm happens?
Yeah, that would be about right.
Okay, so sometime around the year 2000, the Avatar storm happens, and that's where hunters really start just showing up everywhere. So up until now, it was just him and a handful of other people imbued with this power that he's been able to find. And now they're just coming out of the woodwork. So he ramps it up, and he starts building buildings. And because he's able to essentially kill more supernaturals, mostly vampires again, he's just raking in the money. He's got to figure out how to show people that it's not ill-gotten gains, so he starts making shell companies. And at this point in, I think, I'm not sure where we're rebooting it, I think maybe 2016 or in the 2010 to 2020 era, he's just got this huge campus. He's got hunters all over the country, all over the world. And the Hunter Academy is gigantic. They've got bases everywhere. They're doing military operations. They're doing financial operations. And now they have access to so much data with Facebook and Google and all these things that they've hacked into, in addition to all the private data. I mean, they know where everybody is. And it's just a matter of manpower now. And then on top of that, they're starting to push up against some of the other organizations that are figuring out that they're doing this. And all the while, it's based on this idea that the universe imbued a bunch of people with supernatural powers. And instead of going insane, this guy finds them and says, hey, let me teach you and give you a purpose. And they go out and they do that stuff. Do you have any questions about that?
Oh yeah, that was good.
All right, yeah. Hunter Academy.
So
should we explain the Gahara Pact?
Yeah, so one of our main themes, we'll just kind of go over this real quick.
It's already 7:30. Maybe we can save the Gahara Pact for a different time.
Yeah, that sounds good, actually. Yeah.
Because talking about the Hunter Academy actually goes right into my new lore section. So I came up with this today. So I'll just read it out, and then we can talk about it for a few minutes. In 2008, as the Hunter Academy data mining operation was coming into parity with the increased number of resources, that is, hunters, there was the discovery of strange data concerning a region in northern Alberta, Canada. An investigation team was sent, and they discovered a sprawling underground complex that seemed to be abandoned for many decades. It was discovered that it had started as a US-Canada joint military operation during the Cold War, but was left to decay sometime in the 70s. For over 2 years, the Academy developed it as a secret base, before discovering that there was another inhabitant, or rather two. There exists on the base a torpid vampire and its ghoul servant. Using hunter powers and with some help from the mages of the Gahara Pact, they were able to interrogate the ghoul to find out that the vampire had been a kind of ally/prisoner of the United States. When the Cold War slowed down, and the facility was abandoned and the vampire forgotten, as all who knew about him retired and later died. Alright, so...
Yeah.
What questions do you have for me? And then I've got a question for you.
So what would you, as like a storyteller, what would you make as what would you think would be the clan of the vampire? Or have you thought about the in-depthness more of any of this?
No. So mostly what that's based on is I know that sometimes vampires say, I have to go into torpor for a while. I don't know why. What is the normal reason?
So there's a couple different reasons why a vampire goes into torpor. Damage is the most simple of one. You know, you just beat the shit out of it long enough, it'll go into a quote-unquote dead state where it'll be dead for a while and then come back. And then it needs to feed immediately or go back into torpor again, basically, for another. And it all depends on how much humanity it has as to how long it'll be in torpor or how much down its own path it is. So that goes into a bunch of mechanics, but the basis of it is damage. And then the other reason is you can go into torpor on purpose because you're trying to conserve blood, because it takes way less, or zero, I can't remember, it takes at the very least way less blood to stay torpored. And then there's some other things that can torpor you as well, like spells and magic and stuff like that. And I can't remember if there might be another reason. Oh, hungry, if you don't have blood.
Yeah, so in this case, I mean, it could be any one of those. I think maybe if they were just imprisoned there, maybe he just went into torpor and left just enough blood for that ghoul to get by for like a few years, or maybe 30 years, 40 years. Maybe somebody is left out there that knows it's there. Maybe somebody from the technocracy, because actually I called it Kasatawask construct, which implies that it was a technocratic base, which makes sense because the Cold War was an ideological fight that the technocracy was a part of. They're a part of the U.S. government and the Canadian. They're a part of every government, so it makes sense. It also makes sense that it was abandoned because the Cold War ended. And the reason a lot of the bases were up in the Alaska, Canada area was because Russia was easily accessible in the north. One of the other things about the construct that I've got in my mind is it is gigantic, right? It's part of a natural cave system that was already gigantic. And then, I mean, think about the Cold War, how much resources we put into things. I mean, they could have done it under the guise of, a NASA project or something else. They could have removed so much material. So there's the possibility of, hey, the cave system goes deep enough that there's connections to dark umbral realms. There's large enough areas inside that you could have, entire towns built in caves, which is actually kind of what I was thinking. The vampire could have all sorts of knowledge of stuff the government was doing back then. He might have secret knowledge about vampire activities that happened a long time ago. Oh, that makes sense. He would be a Malkavian because he's insane.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
And that would give him access to the Malkavian mind space.
Yeah, the milk time.
Yeah, but he's in torpor, right? So
you can still do mind stuff.
Yeah, he's still doing the mind stuff. And the ghoul would probably know some stuff, and so it would be a cool place for hunter characters to go on a mission. I'm thinking they mostly use the place for training, like cave training. And it's a prison. That's the other part. It's a prison for supernaturals. Because if the U.S. is going to build an underground complex, they're going to include a really nice prison. And they had a vampire there. They probably built some vampire-proof cells already. And the Hunter Academy comes in and improves them even a little bit more. And now you've got a vampire prison.
There you go. Vampire prison. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more than one body, they just haven't found it yet.
Well, that's the other thing. Exploring the entire complex is maybe a thing you send hunters to do at some point. It's like, hey, you've had a rough time, go up to Canada. All you got to do is like map caves for like
so they say
a week. But of course, your group is the one that hits the wrong spot, and I don't know, Nexus Crawler comes out, whatever. Anyway, but that's new lore. Tawask Construct.
Cool. All right, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up on here then, and we'll be back next Sunday at 7 p.m. And tomorrow we are doing a game from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. for Technogate, so tune into that if you would like. And then we're going to try to keep this up every week. Well, see you all next time.
Bye, everybody.